Hey, what's going on? It's at the Letters at Yankee Stadium in the Toronto Blue Jays dugout. Brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer. Arden Swelling, Ben Nicholson Smith. We are on the road with the Blue Jays in the Bronx, in the Mecca at Yankee Stadium for this 4-game set that has taken on a sneaky bit of importance here in mid-August, as both teams are coming in slumping pretty devastatingly, but then also peaking at the right time with late wins in their games coming into this series. We're going to talk to Ross Stripling later on in the podcast, obviously, who was phenomenal at Rogers Center in the finale against the Baltimore Orioles on Wednesday. But Ben, we just kind of have to size up what is going on with this team right now, because all teams, we're going to talk to Strip about this a little bit, all teams ebb, all teams flow, but the Blue Jays ebb of late has been significant.
Oh, it has. You do not want to be in a situation, if you're a Toronto Blue Jays team that began the year with World Series aspirations, of playing a game against the Baltimore Orioles in mid to late August with the potential to lose your playoff seed to that team. That's just not where you want to be.
Wouldn't have predicted that
on
in
many
March.
levels. On many levels. So they have a lot of work to do, really. They have to finish stronger than they've started, and I think that's probably an understatement to put it that way.
I think the goal is the same, obviously, for the Blue Jays. Got to win that number one wild card spot. You want to host that wild card series, but I just don't see any way that we don't enter the final series of the season, right? Those final 3 games, Blue Jays going to be playing the Orioles. Those final 3 games without 5 or 6 teams all in play for 3 spots.
Yeah, that's what it seems like right now, and the Central's wide open too. So it's not even as though you have a clear sense of where that last wild card team would go, because the White Sox and Guardians, Twins, they're all competing. Jays have not swatted away the Orioles nearly successfully enough. That team has been a real problem for the Blue Jays in the last couple of weeks, with many more games to come. So the Jays, look, they have the most talent of any of those teams. They need to make the most of it. They have a lot invested in this team. They signed some big contracts, some of which have worked great, some of which are looking pretty questionable right now. But they still have the talent. So if I had to bet on one of these teams, it would be the Blue Jays, but that doesn't mean that anything's guaranteed. And so they still have a lot cut out for them.
I know we've talked in the past about whether or not the Orioles are for real, and I think that we both fell in the camp of no, they are not. Do you want to adjust that opinion based on what you've seen, or do you still think they are not for real?
Honestly, I still think they're not for real. I'm doubling down on not for real. So let the record state that. I mean, I don't know. Have you changed your opinion?
They're better than I thought they'd be. At some point, I can't deny them. They keep getting it done, right? They were, going into that game, they were a game behind the Toronto Blue Jays in terms of wins. I can't deny that at this point in the season. Dude, it's almost September, so I got to give them credit for what they've done and for how they've gotten here. I still don't believe in the starting rotation, but I also was literally broadcasting the game as Kyle Bradish and Austin Fothler had these fantastic performances. So at a certain point, I kind of have to admit, I was wrong about the Orioles. They're better than I thought they were.
They're better than we thought, for sure. I'll admit I'm wrong if they make the playoffs. I'll even admit I'm wrong if they finish 500.
I don't think they'll finish 500?
I don't.
Wow.
And if they do, I'll admit I'm wrong. But, to me, this is a team that still has a lot of needs ahead of them. Of course, look, there are bigger issues or different issues for the Blue Jays along with the Orioles. This series at Yankee Stadium, as we record this now, it's just about to get started. So we don't know how it's unfolded. But what a huge series. And I think, the idea that the Jays could either be 6 games back or 14 games back, those are pretty big swings, and maybe it just stays at 10 and nothing changes fundamentally. Yeah. But this is actually a pretty big series.
And the Blue Jays have wasted such an opportunity over the last couple of weeks while the Yankees have been scuffling to make up ground in that divisional race. I thought the division was a write-off for a long time, and it still does look pretty much like a write-off unless the Yankees keep losing and the Blue Jays can go on a real streak. But the Yankees have been playing terrible baseball during, if Blue Jays fans think they've been watching a pretty hard to watch product, talk to Yankees fans who have watched their team just fall off a cliff. And yet the Blue Jays have squandered a real opportunity to make up serious ground in the division.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the advantage that the Yankees built up for themselves by playing so well early in the season, because now they can afford to play badly and to have things go wrong and to have their fan base kind of cringing and wondering what's happening. And yet they're still 10 games up. So they're just in such a good spot. And then that means for everybody else except the Astros, who of course will also have a bye, it's scramble mode, because as we've been saying now for months, getting that top seed is such an advantage. You really want to finish with that top seed, not be scrambling on the last weekend. Like you mentioned that series against Baltimore. Yeah. Imagine if the Jays have to start Manoah on short rest to get through it, and then they have to use Romano three days out of 4 just to advance and just to get to the point that they're actually in the postseason on the road against the Twins. You don't want to be there.
I kind of think those games are going to be like that, though. You know, unless the Blue Jays can really turn this thing around and start stringing together some wins. It's so maddening, right? Because you look at the season in the aggregate and you look at the Blue Jays offense and it's top 5 in whatever category you want to look at, right? Like even things that you wouldn't like expect, you know, they've honestly been an elite MLB offense. But then if you had only watched the last 7-10 games, whatever it's been now, you'd say like these, like this lineup, like these guys, why do you think it hasn't been working lately?
It's a good question. It would take someone more observant and astute than me, I think, to answer it, really, because, you know, when I look at this team, I don't have answers. I see, like you do, I look at the big picture. And so part of me, when I'm asked these questions, as you are as well, I'm asked these questions: why are the Blue Jays struggling? Are they too right-handed? Are they too easy to pitch to? Well, if that were the case, then they wouldn't be 4th in MLB in runs scored in WRC+.
Yeah.
You know, and last year they had the same lineup and they had incredible results. So it's not that, but they are not hitting well now, and that's undeniable. So, you know, with the exception of the Wednesday finale against Baltimore where they erupted, but you know, they're not hitting well. So there's something going on. The slump is real. It's not invented. But I mean, do you have an answer to that? Because I really don't.
I honestly don't. And it's like, it's befuddled me for honestly 2 seasons now. And like, I talk about this with Shai all the time. Like, why is this team, like, why is the whole less than the sum of its parts? Because you look at these amazing performances that the Blue Jays get. They have a Cy Young winner and 2 MVP finalists last year. This year you have an Alejandro Kirk breakout. You have a lineup where you have, like, I don't have it in front of me, but I would wager a guess 7 or 8 hitters with making regular plate appearances who are above average, like WRC plus, OPS plus, over 100. How many teams can say that? How many teams have a lineup with that many guys in it, right? And you get Alek Manoah having this phenomenal season. The defense this year has been good. Look at it, like, pick your defensive stat, and there is like some question as to how reliable the publicly available defensive metrics are. But they all like the Blue Jays, and they all say the Blue Jays have been a great defensive team. So I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the big picture, it's like, it's a good team. Yeah. I don't know why it doesn't play better.
Yeah, and I guess to me, one of the things that comes to mind is, at this point, to have essentially 2 starters toward the back of the rotation in Kikuchi and Berrios who have really underperformed. And so that goes a long way toward explaining the underperformance of the team, because, you know, if there are games where the team is scoring a couple of runs,
all good, Matt.
And
right.
Matt Chapman walks past us here. It's his dugout, so no apology needed there. But
he heard me talking about the defense.
Right, he's out of here.
Screw these guys.
So, you know, when you have 2 starters who are really underperforming like that, that means that there are days where, let's say there are 6-7 runs allowed. Well, the offense might have scored 4 that day, which, you know, that's going to happen. You don't win that game. So I think that these things kind of start compounding, and one issue can be easier to, like, it's like base running mistakes. In a 1-0 game, a base running mistake seems fatal. If you score 8, well, it's a base running mistake. These things happen.
You did mention Jose Berrios and Yusei Kikuchi, and those have obviously been the biggest question marks in this rotation. And one of them is no longer in the rotation, Yusei Kikuchi. And I mentioned it on the last podcast that the option of moving Kikuchi to the bullpen was a lot more real now than it was earlier in the season. It was being discussed at the time, and the Blue Jays were considering it, and they obviously decided to take that step. What do you think that means for the Blue Jays starting staff? What do you think that means for the Blue Jays bullpen? What do you think that means for Yusei Kikuchi? How do you see the next 6 weeks playing out?
Yeah, okay, let's start with the bullpen. I don't think it means much for the bullpen. I think he's the lowest leverage reliever in kind of pitches if they're up or down 6-7 runs. For the rotation, Mitch White gets an opportunity. That's going to be really interesting to see what he can do with that opportunity starting here in Yankee Stadium. a couple days from now as we record this. So that'll be really interesting to see what he's capable of. And for Kikuchi, I think it really marks the end of a time in the rotation that really did not go according to plan. That's obvious. He did not have the command that he needed to pitch at the major league level consistently. And so I think there's still, 2 years on this deal. I think he goes into camp next year as a starting pitcher. I think that's probably a safe assumption. And tries to regroup at that point with better command, unless there's a trade avenue to explore. But for now, clearly, he was just not a good enough option. And so they went to Mitch White in the hopes that he can be a better one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Yusei Kikuchi enters spring next year, making adjustments again, trying to put things together, a bit more runway, a bit more track to do some of the things he was trying to do this year in a condensed time frame. Two other things I would not be surprised to see. Number one, Yusei Kikuchi actually being pretty good in a relief role. Honestly,
wow.
I think with some of the stress taken away and some of the anxiety of starting every 5 days, I think with a little bit of the uncertainty of when your opportunities are going to come, I kind of wonder if that helps him a little bit. And I think the Blue Jays are just going to be able to deploy him a lot more situationally now, I guess. I'm struggling for the word here. Like, they're just going to be able to use him in a much more advantageous way and put him in better positions to succeed. The opposition manager isn't going to be able to craft their lineup against him, and he's just going to enter with a pared down repertoire, like you said, likely in low leverage spots at first, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets like a big out or two somewhere down the stretch because the Blue Jays bullpen is strapped or it's extra innings or something like that. Like, it wouldn't shock me if you say Kikuchi's coming in with like a fastball that's playing up and a slider against some tough lefty bats in a really tough spot and actually thriving in that situation down the stretch.
Wow.
You couldn't see that?
I could see it because baseball's baseball and all kinds of things happen. So I could see it. And you painted a good picture there of how it could happen. So it's my imagination can go there. Now, it does require a little imagination, I'll be honest, when I'm thinking about that, because it's just, to me, I never got a convincing answer as to whether he can throw strikes when he really needs to. Or in fact, unfortunately for the Blue Jays, I did get a convincing answer, and the answer was no. So until he can start throwing strikes consistently when he needs to, it's hard for me to envision how that would play better in relief. Because the stuff might play even better, but stuff wasn't his issue because he was touching 97 as a starter. So
stuff's not the issue. Look at the strikeouts, man.
Exactly.
Legit.
So with that being said, I think as Shadavidi photobombs us here, with that being said, I think the stuff might even play up and be better on paper with better spin and better velocity, and yet it might not still lead to the results that the Toronto Blue Jays need.
Not to mention, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is doing a scrum directly to our right, and that is why you are seeing people sometimes maddeningly at exceptionally slow rates of speed walk by the camera lens. We're live and on location, so these things are going to happen. That was only the one thing I wouldn't be surprised by. Number two thing I wouldn't be surprised by, Yusei Kikuchi makes another start for the Blue Jays before the season's up. The Blue Jays have multiple double headers coming up. They're going to have injuries, like shoulders are going to bark. They're going to have workload concerns with certain guys. They're going to want to take opportunities down the stretch if they are able to build up a bit of a lead in the playoff race to reset their rotation. Yusei Kikuchi hasn't made his last start for the Blue Jays this year, I don't think, because who's the other option? Beyond him, it's Casey Lawrence or Thomas Hatch, who's still starting with Buffalo. There was some word of a little role change with him. There is a serious crowd gathering for Vladdy right now. But I think that we're going to see Yusei Kikuchi start again just because of the dearth of options behind him.
And on that front, I totally agree. And I think that's a prediction that is, that's... It would be hard to see it not coming true, really, at this point. They will likely need him for the reasons that you outlined. And so, whenever that is, we'll see. But there's just not much behind him. And so organizationally, that's something that the Jays have to address as they move forward here. They really have to hope for health from their starting five because, and we'll talk to Stripling later, as good as Stripling and, of course, Manoah and Gosman have been, do you ever have some questions beyond that trio? And I think, by the way, if they were in a 3-game wild card, just quick aside here, Stripling's your third, right?
I guess on current form, it has to be Gosman, Manoah, Stripling in that order.
I would think.
That's where I'm at. And I don't want to go too far down the Jose Berrios road. He's going to start tonight, right? So by the time people listen to this podcast, they're going to have more information on just how Jose Berrios looked against the New York Yankees. But I can tell you that, like, I am perplexed. The Blue Jays are perplexed. Jose is perplexed. Everybody is perplexed by the regressions with Jose Berrios.
A terrific performance for Jose Berrios. Probably wanted to stay out a little bit longer, get through the 7th inning, but with Aaron Judge coming up, John Schneider makes the move. Sharing some thoughts with...
There have been times this year where Jose Berrios has looked like Jose Berrios. Like, he's looked like himself, and he's put things back on the rails, and then he's just gone back to the struggles that we've seen this year. Like, the inconsistency from a guy who has been, like, no joke, one of the most consistent starting pitchers for like half a decade has been maddening. So I don't know what's going to happen here tonight at Yankee Stadium, but I think you're right that, like, the way Jose Berrios is pitching right now, it's tough to start him in a playoff game.
It would be. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't refresh the ERA table right before we did this, but at last check, he had the highest ERA of any qualified starter in baseball, which is, you know, you can go out and strike out 13 tonight and pitch 7 innings, still going to have an ERA above 5. So that's telling about where he's at from a season standpoint, about the kind of reliability the Blue Jays have or have not been able to get. And I think Jose Berrios in 2023 is a great bet for a bounce back. But right now, whether it's fastball command, whether it's something else, it's not entirely there. And for the Jays, that really contributes to the uncertainty with the starting rotation.
If not for his track record, if not for his contract, I mean, it would be such a different conversation with Jose Berrios, because you're right. Again, I don't have it in front of me. I would hazard a guess that he has a higher ERA than Yusei Kikuchi.
Yeah. I think Berrios is 5.6.
Yeah. And the Blue Jays got to a point with Yusei Kikuchi where it was like, not another start. You got to leave the rotation. We can't do it again. Jose Berrios' results have been poorer, but it's been a different thing, right? Because I think that Jose Berrios' flashes of, like, effectiveness have been greater than Kikuchi's, right? Like, Kikuchi was kind of like consistently mediocre, to be candid, throughout the year, whereas Berrios has had these pretty amazing peaks. He's had like 13 strikeout games. His valleys have just been deeper, where it's like 8 runs, whereas maybe Kikuchi's out when he's only given up 5.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because sometimes with Kikuchi, the kind of bad outings that he has, he's walking everyone. End of the day, if you walk 6 batters and 2 1/3, that's a really rough start, but you're not probably allowing 7 runs. Either way, I mean, the fact that those are your points of reference kind of tells you that the back of the rotation, what was supposed to be the mid of the rotation, actually, has really underperformed and contributes to where the Blue Jays are, where they now need to push things forward. They need to, if they keep going like this, they're going to win 86 games and maybe make the playoffs. It's got to be better.
Time now for Major League Beer for Major League Baseball, brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer. Ben, we're in the Bronx. We're at Yankee Stadium. A lot of Yankee legends, a lot of history with this team. Pick one Yankee that you would like to see compete today.
Oh, man, so many of them. I'm going to start with Mickey Mantle, because I think from a tools standpoint, you're looking at someone who is almost the prototypical 5-tool player. I mean, switch hitter with incredible power from both sides of the plate. Incredible speed, too, going down the lines. He obviously dealt with a lot of knee injuries and had that limit his career. But I think as he was coming up, 21, 22 years old, in his prime, like, he would have been the kind of guy, I mean, like a Mike Trout who switch hits, essentially. And watching that in any era is incredible. So I think he would play today. I think those skills would play today. I think if he was around today, he would be a superstar, and it would be a ton of fun to watch what he could do.
You know who would not be a superstar if he was around today? It's my pick, Babe Ruth. I want to see Babe Ruth play just because, like, it's awesome and he's Babe Ruth and whatever, but also because I think he would get, like, laughed out of 2022 MLB. I do not think Babe Ruth could hang with these guys. He never had to face, first of all, never had to face a non-white player, but second of all, like, never had to face, I don't know, pick your best sinker. And he never had to face Clay Holmes' sinker. He never had to face Emmanuel Class's, like, 99 mile an hour cutter. He never had to face this breaking stuff, this type of velocity. I honestly don't think he could hang. I know he's a great player, a legend, a Hall of Famer, amazing numbers, but you put Babe Ruth in 2022 MLB, I think he gets absolutely laughed out of the league.
If you could have either Babe Ruth or Daniel Vogelbach for a major league team in 2022.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer.
You're going Vogelbach.
I don't think, Daniel Vogelbach's probably got like a 115 weighted runs created plus, something like that. Babe Ruth might put up like 70, maybe, generously, against today's pitchers in his condition.
If you were a front office drafting and Babe Ruth was draft eligible, where would you draft him?
Not high.
Would you burn like a 10th rounder on him?
I don't know. I mean, what I don't know how to think of Babe Ruth as a high schooler or a college player at the moment.
Because I agree with you that I would rather have Daniel Vogelbach on a major league team right now, but I would draft Babe Ruth in the first round. If there was a draft, I would take him 1-1. And if worse comes to worse, you went down drafting Babe Ruth.
So you go and you talk to Babe Ruth and you do the background on him, and it's like he's out of shape. He just eats hot dogs and drinks beer all the time, literally in between innings. Doesn't seem to be a whole ton of work ethic there. You would burn a first-round pick.
I would burn the 1-1 pick.
So it's
1-1.
$9 million.
I would go over slot. I would go over slot. It's Babe Ruth.
Why? Yeah, but you don't know that he's going to become Babe Ruth.
You hand him over to your development people. You say, guys, we drafted this guy. His name is Babe Ruth. I want to see what you can do with him, and you take the shot. So I would go 1-1, but I agree. For now, Daniel Vogelbach, I would rather have him.
When's the last time there was a player drafted with the name Babe? Let alone what you're discussing.
Good question.
Anyway, we've gone too far down this rabbit hole. We're going to wrap it up, but we're going to be here all weekend at Yankee Stadium with more ATL content. Want to give a big thank you to our producers here on the ground, Christian Ryan and Nick Andrade, in real life, doing the audio, doing the video. Huge heavy lifting done by them, so thanks so much. Thanks to Ben Nicholson-Smith. Thanks to all you for listening. I'm Arden Zwelling. Talk to you next time on At The Letters.